In J.R.R. Tolkien's legendary realm of Middle-earth, the ambition of Saruman to seize the One Ring for himself constitutes one of the story's critical turning points. In the novel The Two Towers, the scenes in which Saruman dispatches his army of Uruk-hai to capture the hobbits are a tangible manifestation of this lust for power. Though Saruman was initially sent to Middle-earth as one of the Istari to strive against Sauron, in time he succumbed to his own quest for dominion. In The Fellowship of the Ring, his understating of Sauron's resurgence during the meetings of the White Council, all while secretly forging his own designs, sows the seeds of his treason. Had Saruman seized the One Ring, it would have been not merely an individual triumph, but a catastrophe that would have altered the destiny of all Middle-earth. When Saruman's Uruk-hai set forth with orders to capture the hobbits, their true objective was the One Ring. In The Two Towers, these hybrid orcs under Ugluk's command abduct Merry and Pippin, unaware that the ring is with Frodo. Yet Saruman's directive is explicit. He commands them to bring them alive, and do not search them. This demonstrates Saruman's direct attempt to seize the ring. Had this plan succeeded, for example, if the Uruk-hai had not been intercepted by the riders of Rohan, or if the intervention of Aragorn, Legolas, and Gimli had been delayed, Saruman would have secured the ring within the Tower of Orthanc at Isengard. In Tolkien's work, The Treason of Isengard, the drafts for these very scenes explore Saruman's motivations in greater depth. Here, he plans to position himself as Sauron's rival, intending to wield the ring for his own power. The One Ring, once seized, would have transformed Saruman's character. Already in communication with Sauron through the Palantir, Saruman would have become an absolute tyrant with the ring in his possession. In works such as Morgoth's Ring, Tolkien emphasizes the corrupting influence of the Rings of Power. Under this influence, Saruman would have turned Middle-earth into an industrial hellscape. His engines that laid waste to the forest of Isengard, empowered by the ring, would have swiftly overwhelmed Rohan and Gondor. In terms of the characters, Frodo's quest would have been cut short, and the Fellowship of the Ring utterly broken. Aragorn would have been defeated before he could ever claim his throne, while Gandalf would have been drawn into a mortal conflict with his former ally. Indeed, in the drafts within The Return of the Shadow, alternative versions of such conflicts are discussed. The course of Middle-earth, in turn, would have strayed onto a dark path. Saruman would have entered into a rivalry with Sauron, rather than an alliance. Yet, as the ring was ultimately bound to Sauron, this contest would likely have ended with Sauron's supremacy. As Tolkien wrote of the ring's nature in the letters, the ring reflects the will of its master and enslaves those who wield it. Enslaved thus, Saruman might have attempted to turn the armies of Mordor to his own cause, but he would likely have failed, and Middle-earth would have been laid waste in the ensuing war between two dark lords. In The War of the Ring, the notes on alternative courses for the war illuminate the devastating potential of such a scenario. This alternate history underscores the fragile balance of Tolkien's universe. Saruman's ambition recalls the ancient betrayals found in works like the Silmarillion 1977 posthumous, edited by Christopher Tolkien. Much like the fall of Melkor, Saruman's was a descent from light into darkness. In those critical hours on the plains of Rohan, as recounted in The Two Towers, when Ugluk's Uruk-hai company captured Merry and Pippin, the One Ring was still about Frodo's neck. In this alternate course of events, however, the dawn raid of the Rohirrim never takes place. Eomer's riders are misdirected by Saruman's spies and ambushed on the borders of Fangorn Forest. In the drafts within The Treason of Isengard, Christopher Tolkien highlights how strict his father's notes were regarding the Uruk-hai's order to bring the hobbits alive and untouched. No wound, no mark. Their master will question them himself. Had this order been carried out to the letter, Frodo, in his pursuit of Merry and Pippin, would have been caught in the same net. The three hobbits, bound in chains, would have been dragged day and night from the western banks of the Anduin all the way to Isengard. Along the way, despite the objections of Mordor orcs like Grishnak, the discipline of Ugluk prevails. In the manuscripts of the War of the Ring, Tolkien notes that Ugluk silences the others by roaring, "By the command of the White Hand." The 400-league journey from the borders of the Shire to Isengard would become a triumphal march for Saruman, who watches their progress through the Palantir. When the hobbits are dragged through the iron gates of Orthanc, Saruman himself receives them with the same cold, mocking voice he used during Gandalf's captivity in the Fellowship of the Ring. "So, the little folk of the Shire, and a ring-bearer among you," as he takes the one ring from Frodo's neck and slips it onto his own finger, one might recall a line from the Letters of Tolkien, letter 246. "The ring appears to serve its master, but in truth, it makes its master serve it." This is a truth Saruman would learn all too soon. During the first night in the dungeons of Isengard, the ring's corrupting whispers echo in Saruman's mind. Within Morgoth's ring, Tolkien states that the rings of power were designed to bend the will of the user to their own purpose. Though Saruman initially sees the ring as a tool, the tool soon masters him. In his chamber atop Orthanc, gazing into the Palantir at the eye of Sauron, he uses the ring's power to multiply his armies, manifold Uruk-hai, wolves, and even warg riders. In the history of The Hobbit, it is mentioned that in Tolkien's early drafts, Saruman dreamt of creating an industrial empire fused with the ring. This dream now becomes a reality. The fields of the Shire are burned, the inns of Bree are torn down, and the bridges of Tarbad are rebuilt by Uruk-hai engineers, all under the Iron Fist of Isengard. While Frodo, Sam, and the other hobbits are bound in chains, they become the first victims of Saruman's new order. In the appendices of The Return of the King, a scene is noted in Tolkien's writings where captives are put to work under the lash. This scene would have come to pass in a much darker form in the event of Saruman's victory. The hobbits are enslaved to forge ring metal in the furnaces of Orthanc. Sam's cry of "Master Frodo" echoes of the stone walls of Isengard. With the power of the ring, Saruman creates his own black speech. The Uruk-hai are no longer mere orcs, but semi-sentient soldiers bound to the ring's will. The paragraphs Tolkien wrote on armies of corrupted will in the War of the Jewels become the cornerstone of Saruman's new empire. At this point, the other powers of Middle-earth have yet to grasp what they are facing. Though Gandalf has emerged from Moria alive, he has been deceived through Saruman's manipulations of the Palantir into believing that Isengard remains a friend. Aragorn, Legolas, and Gimli, while following the trail along the Anduin, are diverted westward into Eriador by false clues. Rohan is still neutral, held in inaction by Theoden's lingering reverence for Saruman. Meanwhile, Gondor is placated by the lie of a white-robed ally that Denethor sees in his Palantir. In Sauron Defeated, Saruman's plan to deceive Sauron, as elaborated upon in Christopher Tolkien's notes on his father's work, would, with the One Ring in his possession, no longer be a deception, but an open challenge. In the final pages of the Fellowship of the Ring, the moment Gandalf survives his clash with the Balrog and makes his way towards the Grey Havens becomes the turning point against Saruman's victory. In this alternate course, as Gandalf ascends from the depths of Moria, he perceives the darkness in Isengard through the Palantir. In the drafts of The Return of the Shadow, Tolkien notes that Gandalf's mind for a moment reached to Orthanc. It is here that he sees the One Ring gleaming on Saruman's finger. As Círdan at the Grey Havens entrusts Narya the Ring of Fire to Gandalf, the sentiment from the Letters of Tolkien, letter 131, echoes. Narya is the flame that is kindled against despair. With this flame, Gandalf becomes the sole hope against Saruman's industrial empire. When Gandalf departs from the Grey Havens, he bears not only Narya, but is also accompanied by a messenger who has arrived with one of the last ships of the elves, Glorfindel. Within the Treason of Isengard, Christopher Tolkien emphasizes that in his father's early notes, Glorfindel is a figure who has fought against Sauron since the Second Age. Gandalf and Glorfindel chart a secret course from west to east, passing through the forsaken roads of Eriador and over the ruined bridges of Tarbad, until they reach Fangorn Forest. Here, the Ents have not yet awakened, but Gandalf delivers a speech similar to the one he has with Treebeard in the Two Towers. Saruman has become a sorcerer who does not merely fell trees, but enslaves them. Treebeard's wrath flows like a flood towards Isengard. However, the victory is short-lived. Saruman withdraws to his iron chamber at the very top of Orthanc. Here, he refuses to remove the One Ring from his finger. Within Sauron Defeated, Christopher Tolkien states that, in his father's notes, Saruman believed he would die if he relinquished the ring. With the aid of the Ents, Gandalf besieges Orthanc, yet the ring renders Saruman invisible. This is the darkest moment for Middle-earth. Two wizards in one tower, locked in an unending duel for a single ring. Gandalf dispels Saruman's illusions with Narya. Saruman, in turn, bends reality itself with the One Ring. In the War of the Jewels, Tolkien makes a note that the wielder of the ring might be able to hold time. Saruman brings this concept to life. Inside Orthanc, the hours cease to pass, the days do not turn, and the Ents are turned to stone. Outside, Middle-earth holds its breath. Aragorn loses the trail on the western banks of the Anduin. Legolas, with his elf eyes, sees two lights atop Orthanc, one red, one white. Rohan, under Theoden's lead, marches on Isengard, but the petrification of the Ents leads them to believe Saruman has triumphed. In the appendices of The Return of the King, there exists a draft scene where Tolkien considered that the war might end within a tower. This scene now becomes reality. Gandalf and Saruman, within Orthanc, engage in the final duel that will determine the fate of the One Ring, and this duel will either extinguish the last hope of Middle-earth or see it reborn. In the scene of the Siege of Isengard in the Two Towers, Gandalf confronts Saruman as he looks down from the balcony of Orthanc. In this alternate course, that same balcony becomes the arena for the final reckoning between the two wizards. As Gandalf melts the gates of Orthanc with the flame of Narya, Saruman darkens the sky with the golden gleam of the One Ring. Within Morgoth's ring, Tolkien writes that the rings of power, when used against one another, could tear reality itself. This moment is the first crackle of that tearing. The stones of Orthanc tremble, the horns grow still, and the branches of Fangorn twist time itself bends in the clash of two wills. The first stage of the duel is fought in the mind. Saruman, with the Palantir, seizes Gandalf's memories, the darkness of Moria, the whip of the Balrog, the light of Valinor. In the drafts of the Treason of Isengard, Tolkien notes Saruman's ability to turn the memories of others into his own weapon. Gandalf counters this assault with Narya. The Ring of Fire burns away Saruman's lies, and the songs of the Valar echo from the walls of Orthanc. Within the letters of Tolkien, letter 144, Tolkien writes that Narya fed courage not with fire but with hope. With this hope, Gandalf confronts Saruman with his own past, his days in the White Council, his friendship with Radagast. For the first time, Saruman falters, reeling back. The second stage is physical. Saruman, with the power of the One Ring, animates the very stones of Orthanc. The tower itself stalks towards Gandalf like a giant Uruk-hai. In The War of the Ring, Christopher Tolkien shares a draft from his father wherein the wielder of the ring could bind matter to his will. Here, this concept becomes reality. Gandalf strikes his staff upon the ground, and with the flame of Narya, the foundations of Orthanc crack. The Ents are broken free from their stillness. Treebeard booms, groom, boom, the stones are waking. The scene from the Two Towers, where the Ents break the dam, is here inverted. Gandalf turns the waters of the Anduin upon Orthanc, while Saruman, with the ring, turns the waters to steam. For an instant, Isengard is transformed into a seething cauldron. The third and final stage is a spiritual reckoning. Saruman, removing the One Ring from his finger, offers it to Gandalf a trap. Within Sauron Defeated, Tolkien writes that if the wielder of the ring relinquishes it, he also relinquishes a part of his will. Saruman offers this very part to Gandalf. Gandalf raises Narya and cries, I will not walk your path, Kurunir. The very words Saruman spoke to Gandalf in the Fellowship of the Ring are here turned back upon him. Gandalf does not take the ring. Instead, he thrusts his staff into Saruman's breast. The flame of Narya begins to melt the gold of the One Ring, but the ring clings to Gandalf's hand. In the drafts of The Return of the Shadow, Tolkien notes that the ring is seeking a new bearer. This moment is the culmination of that search. Atop Orthanc, the two wizards become one. Saruman's body turns to ash, while in Gandalf's eyes, the flame of the One Ring now glows. Within the War of the Jewels, Tolkien writes that the ring cannot remain without a master. Saruman's death bequeaths the ring to Gandalf. At Gandalf's command, the Ents withdraw. When the riders of Rohan arrive at Isengard, they see only a figure robed in white, but it is no longer Gandalf. The One Ring has destroyed Saruman's ambition, only to corrupt Gandalf's wisdom. The quote from the Letters of Tolkien, letter 246, summarizes this tragedy. The ring enslaves even the wisest. Middle-earth is introduced to a new Dark Lord. Gandalf, or as he is now, the White Ring-lord, departs from Orthanc. Narya fades in the shadow of the One Ring. When Aragorn arrives at Helm's Deep, he receives Gandalf's message. Isengard is not an enemy, but an ally. Gondor is divided by the madness of Denethor. Sauron, watching from Mordor, now faces a single, united threat instead of two rivals. In the appendices of The Return of the King, Tolkien makes a note that the final bearer of the ring could be the most unexpected person. Here, that note is twisted into a dreadful prophecy. The Duel of Orthanc has destroyed the last hope of Middle-earth. The One Ring has passed from Saruman to Gandalf, but it has not brought freedom. In the section to follow, we shall examine the first move of this new master, the fall of Rohan. The defense of Helm's Deep in The Return of the King is the ultimate symbol of resistance for the free peoples. In this alternate course, that symbol is reduced to ash overnight. Gandalf, now the bearer of the One Ring, the flame of Narya extinguished, the cold cunning of Saruman in his eyes, departs from Orthanc, accompanied not by Uruk-hai, but by the silent shadows of the Huorns. In the drafts of The War of the Ring, Tolkien writes that the wielder of the ring could bind nature to his will. With this bond, Gandalf enslaves the spirits of Fangorn. As Treebeard murmurs, "Whom, the White Master speaks," the Ents march toward the plains of Rohan, but this time not to destroy, but to compel surrender. Theoden welcomes Gandalf in his golden hall at Edoras. He expects a friendship akin to the one in the Two Towers. Yet, Gandalf's voice bears the mocking tone of Saruman. Rohan is now under the wardship of Isengard. In the Letters of Tolkien, letter 183, Tolkien writes that the wielder of the ring could break hearts with his voice. With this voice, Gandalf bends the will of Theoden. Eomer draws his sword, but the Huorns surround the doors to the hall, and Eowyn's scream is stifled. Within the Treason of Isengard, Christopher Tolkien notes that his father shared a draft scene concerning the fall of Rohan. Here, that scene becomes a bloody reality. Theoden kneels upon his throne. Rohan has been taken in a single night. Marching upon Helm's Deep, Gandalf uses the One Ring to awaken the stones of the fortress. Within Morgoth's ring, Tolkien emphasizes that the ring could animate matter. The walls of the Hornburg turn upon the Rohirrim like their own weapons. As Aragorn, Legolas, and Gimli organize a final defense upon the battlements, Gandalf's white robe appears on the crest of the hill. In the drafts of The Return of the Shadow, Tolkien notes that the bearer of the ring would not recognize his former friends. Aragorn calls out to Gandalf, "Mithrandir, this is not you." Gandalf's reply is the whisper of the One Ring, "I am the new master of Middle-earth." The Huorns emerge from within the deep itself. The Rohirrim are strangled in their own stronghold. The battle becomes a slaughter. Eomer, with the last of the Rohirrim, falls back to the gates of the Hornburg, but Gandalf melts the gates with the One Ring. In The War of the Jewels, Tolkien writes that the wielder of the ring could unite fire with cold. With this union, Gandalf freezes Rohan, snow falls upon the plains, the horses freeze solid, and Eowyn's sword shatters. Aragorn challenges Gandalf with Andúril, but the last spark of Narya is extinguished in the shadow of the One Ring. In the drafts of Sauron Defeated, Tolkien writes that the ring destroys old friendships. Aragorn kneels under Gandalf's staff, but he is not slain, he is enslaved. Fall of Rohan serves as a warning to Gondor. Denethor beholds Gandalf in his palantir in Minas Tirith, but he is now the heir of Saruman. The scene of Denethor's madness in The Return of the King arrives early here. The steward chooses to slay Faramir, rather than surrender his sons to Gandalf. The phantom of Boromir resonates in Gandalf's voice. Gondor is mine. The gates of Gondor, like those of Rohan, are opened from within. In the Letters of Tolkien, letter 191, Tolkien writes that the bearer of the ring could bind cities to his own will. Minas Tirith becomes the fortress of the White Ring-lord overnight. Middle-earth is now divided between two lords, Sauron in Mordor and Gandalf in Isengard. Yet, the One Ring remains bound to Sauron. Gandalf plans one final stroke to break this bond. In The War of the Ring, Tolkien notes that the ring could call to its master. Gandalf reverses this call, drawing it not to Mordor, but to himself. The Eye of Barad-dûr turns to Isengard. Sauron perceives that his rival has seized the ring. The war between the two Dark Lords is now inevitable. The fall of Rohan seals the doom of the Free Peoples. Aragorn is taken in chains to Orthanc. Legolas remains hanged in the branches of the Horns. Gimli is melted in the furnaces of Isengard. Gandalf is crowned in the Golden Hall of Edoras, but the crown lies in the shadow of the One Ring. The great battle on the Pelennor fields in The Return of the King ends with the victory of the Free Peoples. In this alternate course, the same fields become a slaughterhouse where the armies of two Dark Lords clash. As Gandalf, bearer of the One Ring, the flame of Narya extinguished, the cold cunning of Saruman in his eyes marches from Orthanc toward Mordor. Sauron atop Barad-dûr feels the call of the ring. Within Morgoth's ring, Tolkien writes that the One Ring always drew its master back to it. Gandalf seeks to turn this pull to his own advantage. The army that sets forth from Isengard Uruk-hai, Huorns, and the enslaved Rohirrim and Gondorians crosses the Anduin, burns the forests of Ithilien, and seizes Osgiliath overnight. As soon as he perceives this threat, Sauron dispatches the Nazgûl. As the Nine Ring Wraiths take flight from Minas Morgul, the notes in the drafts of The War of the Ring reveal Tolkien's thought that the new bearer of the ring would not be able to control the Nazgûl. But Gandalf seizes this control. With the gleam of the One Ring, the sword of the Witch King turns against its own master. In the Letters of Tolkien, letter 246, Tolkien writes that the ring could bind old slaves to a new master. The Nazgûl are now under Gandalf's command. Upon the Pelennor fields, Blackwings gather about the White Robe. Sauron's most powerful weapon has fallen into the hands of his rival. The war is less a clash of two armies than it is a duel between two wills. Sauron watches Gandalf with the Eye of Barad-dûr. Gandalf, with the One Ring, blinds the eye. Within the treason of Isengard, Christopher Tolkien shares that his father noted in a draft that the wielder of the ring could oppose the will of Sauron. Gandalf now carries this opposition to its ultimate conclusion. As the armies of Mordor orcs, trolls, and Easterlings pour onto the Pelennor, they are met by Gandalf's slave host. The Huorns strangle the trolls, the Nazgûl cut down the Easterlings from the air, and the chained form of Aragorn terrifies Sauron's commanders. In the drafts of Sauron Defeated, Tolkien writes that the bearer of the ring could make weapons of his former friends. Aragorn Andúril broken strangles Sauron's generals at Gandalf's command. Gandalf melts the gates with the One Ring. Sauron retaliates with volcanic flames. Within the War of the Jewels, Tolkien notes that the wielder of the ring could not control the fires of Orodruin. Gandalf draws this fire to himself. The mountain erupts, but the lava devours not the host of Mordor, but the army of Isengard. Gandalf comprehends his miscalculation. the ring is pulling him not towards Sauron, but towards its own end. In the drafts of The Return of the Shadow, Tolkien writes that the final bearer of the ring would be destroyed by his own will. Gandalf now fulfills this prophecy. The final duel takes place in the crater of Orodruin. Sauron, though lacking a physical form, assails Gandalf with the flame of the eye. Gandalf raises the One Ring, but it slips from his finger. Within the letters of Tolkien, letter 131, Tolkien writes that the ring could not remain masterless, but would be unmade upon the death of its master. Gandalf understands this truth. The Nazgûl abandon their master. The Hurons turn to stone. Aragorn, freed from his chains, thrusts the shard of Andúril into Gandalf's breast. The scene of Aragorn's coronation in The Return of the King is here inverted. Aragorn becomes not a king, but an avenger. Orodruin erupts. The One Ring falls into the lava, but this time not borne by Frodo, but along with the body of Gandalf. The Eye of Sauron is extinguished. Barad-dûr collapses. Within Morgoth's ring, Tolkien writes that the destruction of the ring would also destroy all darkness. This destruction saves Middle-earth, but the cost is grievous. Rohan, Gondor, the Shire all have been laid waste. Aragorn cannot claim the throne. Legolas departs from Middle-earth. Middle-earth is free, but it is empty. The One Ring passed from Saruman to Gandalf, and from Gandalf to the flames, but the victory belongs to no one. Within the War of the Ring, Tolkien writes of the silence that followed the destruction of the ring. This silence is the end of this alternate history. In the final appendix of The Return of the King, the end of the Third Age, the destruction of the One Ring is said to have brought freedom to Middle-earth. In this alternate course, the same destruction occurs, but freedom is an empty shell. As the One Ring is consumed by the lava in Orodruin's final eruption, the Eye of Sauron is extinguished, Barad-dûr collapses, and the wings of the Nazgûl turn to ash. Within Morgoth's ring, Tolkien writes that the destruction of the ring would also free all bound powers from their chains. This liberation also disperses Gandalf's slave army. The Hurons become trees once more, the Uruk-hai crumble to dust, and Aragorn's chains are broken, but there is no kingdom left for a king. On the Pelennor fields, as the smoke of battle clears, the survivors behold only ruin. In the drafts of The War of the Ring, Tolkien notes that the silence that followed the destruction of the ring could be heavier than victory. This weight is felt on the plains of Rohan, upon the walls of Gondor, and in the fields of Shire. Theoden lies dead in the golden hall of Edoras. Éowyn has been crushed beneath the stones of Helm's Deep. Faramir has burned in his father's madness. Of the 7 tiers of Minas Tirith, only the topmost flagpole remains standing and no banner flies from it. In the letters of Tolkien, letter 154, Tolkien writes that the destruction of the ring could divide the peoples rather than unite them. This division is the new reality of Middle-earth. Aragorn, with the shards of Andúril, returns to Orthanc. Isengard has already been laid waste by the wrath of the Ents. The breaking of the dam, described in The Two Towers, is far more devastating here. The waters of Fangorn merge with the Anduin, turning the plains into a swamp. Atop Orthanc, Aragorn finds Gandalf's white robe within it. There is only ash. In the drafts of The Return of the Shadow, Tolkien writes that the final bearer of the ring would be destroyed along with his body. Gandalf has shared the fate of Saruman. From within the robe, Aragorn retrieves Narya. The Ring of Fire is now cold. Within the treason of Isengard, Christopher Tolkien shares that his father had noted that when Narya forsook its master, hope too would be extinguished. Here, that note becomes reality. Upon returning to the Shire, Samwise Gamgee finds a great desert where the fields once lay. Within the history of The Hobbit, there is a scene in Tolkien's early drafts where the Shire could suffer industrial ruin. This scene is the remnant of Saruman's victory. Sam stands at the door of Bagan, but there is no door, only a hole. Frodo, having been taken in chains to Orthanc, is freed by the ring's destruction, but his mind is broken. In the drafts of Sauron Defeated, Tolkien writes that the ring-bearer would carry the weight of memories even after the ring was destroyed. Frodo gazes at the grey horizon and says, "I cannot go to the west, for the west has burned as well." Sam sows seeds alone, but the soil is no longer fertile. The elves depart from the Grey Havens in the last ships. On the western banks of the Anduin, Legolas finds the body of Gimli the dwarf had been melted in the furnaces of Isengard, with only his beard remaining. Within the War of the Jewels, Tolkien writes that the elves would leave Middle-earth at the end of the Third Age. Here, this departure is far earlier and far more sorrowful. As Círdan boards the last ship, he says, "We are returning to Valinor, but it is only shadows that return." The ships set sail upon the grey sea, leaving behind them a world that was once green. Middle-earth enters the Fourth Age, but this is not the age of man. In the Letters of Tolkien, letter 211, Tolkien writes that the age that followed the ring's destruction would be the end of the old magic. Here, this ending leaves a complete void. Aragorn is not crowned in the ruins of Minas Tirith. With only a sword, alone, he walks into the barren lands of Mordor. In the wreckage of Barad-dûr, he finds the helm of Sauron. Within it, there is nothing. Aragorn sets the helm down and says, "The kingdoms are ended. The dream of the great peace from the return of the king remains but a dream here." The Fourth Age is the age of silence. Mountains rise, rivers run dry, forests are reborn, but there are no songs within them. Within the War of the Ring, Tolkien notes that the silence that followed the ring's destruction could be not a new beginning, but an end. This end is the alternate fate of Middle-earth. In the appendices of The Return of the King, Tolkien writes that the Fourth Age would begin with a great peace under the dominion of man. In this alternate course, there is no peace, only a long healing. Years after the final eruption of Orodruin, the first blade of grass sprouts in the barren lands of Mordor, but this sprout is the work of neither Sauron nor Saruman. Within Morgoth's ring, Tolkien notes that the destruction of the ring could make the land fertile again, but this would take centuries. Those centuries have now begun. On the day Aragorn leaves the helm in the wreckage of Barad-dûr, a seed falls into his pocket, the Lasgalat seed, brought by Sam from the Shire. Aragorn returns alone to the ruins of Gondor. Of the 7 tiers of Minas Tirith, only the first remains standing. In the drafts of The War of the Ring, Tolkien writes that ruined cities could not be rebuilt, but they could be reborn. Aragorn does not reforge the shards of Andúril. He places them like an altar and says, "Here, not kingdoms, but memories shall live." Within the Letters of Tolkien, letter 181, Tolkien writes that the age that followed the ring's destruction would be shaped not in the shadow of old heroes, but in the light of new generations. This light shines not in the descendants of Aragorn, but in a hobbit from the Shire. As Samwise Gamgee sows seeds at the hollowed-out door of Bag End, something stirs beneath the grey soil. Within the history of The Hobbit, there is a scene in Tolkien's early drafts where the Shire could become green again, but it would take the patience of a hobbit. This scene now comes to pass. Every morning, Sam carries water to the same spot from the Anduin. Years pass. The first Galat tree rises before Bag End. Within the treason of Isengard, Christopher Tolkien shares that his father noted that trees are a power that wizards have forgotten. This power is reborn in Sam's hands. On the plains of Rohan, the daughter of Eomer, her name unknown while riding, pauses in the shadow of a horn. In the Two Towers, it is told how the Ents protected Rohan. Here, the horns still stand, but they are no longer enslaved. The girl plucks a leaf from the horn's branch. The leaf is the color of gold. Within the War of the Jewels, Tolkien writes that the destruction of the ring would set nature free, but that freedom would be slow. This slowness begins with a song in Rohan. The girl buries the leaf in the ruins of Edoras. The following year, golden grasses cover the plains. In Gondor, the son of Faramir, his name forgotten, establishes a library on the first tier of Minas Tirith. In the drafts of Sauron Defeated, Tolkien writes that those who remained after the destruction of the ring would gather knowledge anew. This gathering begins here. The child finds a palantir recovered from Orthanc. The stone no longer serves anyone, it merely shows the past. Within it, he sees Gandalf's final gaze, the cold flame of Narya, the melting of the One Ring, the broken sword of Aragorn. Within the Return of the Shadow, Tolkien notes that the palantir show not truth itself, but a shadow of the truth. This shadow becomes a lesson for the new generation. The tidings from the Shire, Rohan, and Gondor converge on the grey horizon. Sam's Gala Tree, the golden grasses of Rohan, the Palantir Library of Gondor, all are the first green shoots of the Fourth Age. Within the letters of Tolkien, letter 131, Tolkien writes that the age that followed the ring's destruction would be the age not of old magic, but of simple goodness. This goodness lives on in the seed of a hobbit, in the leaf of a maiden, and in the book of a child. Middle-earth is still wounded, the mountains still stand, the rivers still run dry, the forests are still silent. But there is a light on the grey horizon, small, flickering, yet undying. Within the War of the Ring, Tolkien notes that the silence that followed the ring's destruction could be the beginning of a new song. This song now begins to be heard. The ambition of Saruman, the wisdom of Gandalf, the wrath of Sauron all have been buried in the lava. But the seed of Sam, the leaf of Eomer's daughter, the book of Faramir's son, they are the new story of Middle-earth.